I'm going to show you one of the most common details I see some people miss. And I'm going to teach you about these details so you can do it the same way the pros do it. My name is Dusty, and I'm a welding artist from Vancouver Island, Canada. On my YouTube channel, it is my mission to teach and show off the possibilities of TIG welding. And I want to show it to all the positive people in the welding industry who love TIG welding as much as I do. So, join me for my mission on my channel, and let's get welding. This is Pacific Arc TIG Welding. So, I'm lucky enough to get sent photos from people who are kind enough to share their work with me. They share welding projects, they share what they're going on through their job, and sometimes I see small details in their TIG welds that would help make a big difference to the overall function as a TIG weld, as well as appearance. So let's go over this one thing that I see most commonly, and today I'll teach you how to deal with it and how I would do it. So I've talked a little bit about in previous episodes about how to connect and plan your welds properly, and how to get the best looking passes you can. All these welds come from the most important part of the weld, and that is the start. I did an episode specifically on this small detail, which is absolutely the biggest point that I teach all of my students in my online training program. You can check that episode out right here. It's linked in the description below. This episode for a beginner or anybody looking to up their game is a must watch. Learning the skills in this video will set you up perfectly for what I'm about to teach you here. And this detail has a lot to do with planning. Look at this photo here. Here we see a corner where two welds have gone over a surface, turned a corner, and then continued around to another surface. Do you see the thing here that could be considered a weld flaw? Right here, in between the two, do you see the little void there? It doesn't seem like much, but this small gap in between the two weld passes that haven't fully blended together can become a pretty big problem down the line. Especially if this is something structural or has any kind of stress on it. A small flaw like this in a weld can cause a problem later on down the line that can lead to a big difference in strength, resiliency over time, and possibly even failing completely. Perhaps this product is exposed to any severe weather, especially anything near the ocean. Contaminants and other types of things can get lodged in this void and can damage the material, as obviously it can get stuck into a little void like this. Anytime you're working around a curved surface or going around a corner of any kind, it's really worth it to pay attention to where you change direction or connect welds. I'll show you a way that I prefer to wrap my corners and connect separate passes. Look at this one here. Do you see how there is no void or gap in between the two? Obviously this isn't all one pass, but if it were painted, you possibly wouldn't even be able to tell exactly where my start stop was. The idea is to turn a corner and go around the next surface or around the other side of a corner as if nothing had changed at all. We want to continue the next pass with the exact same profile of the previous pass. And how do we achieve the profile of the previous pass? The start. You have to have a perfect start. Again, this all comes from that episode I mentioned before. Here it is again. It's in the description below. Go watch it. This episode talks all about how to establish a pass with the perfect profile so that we eliminate this problem from happening. Once we start up our next pass with a perfect start, all that will matter is just paying attention to make sure that we roll back and connect properly with the previous pass. Having a quick visual inspection after, just confirm that you have connected them properly. You're already going to be doing these two passes. Why not take a little bit of extra time to focus on the most important part and mentally prepare that we know how to deal with this when we connect the two passes. Take a look at this one here. Here we can see two different welds on two different sizes of this piece of flat bar or stiffener or whatever it is. I've basically done the first pass, stopped completely, reset, turned the corner, blended from the first weld around to the next side where I could reach it with the next weld, and then continued on. Almost even argue that this is 3 passes, not 2. Do you see how much more strength that this is going to hold now? We've got a proper filler amount and connected everything with the same profile as the previous passes. All right, let's get set up and run a little welding demo here so I can demonstrate what I'm talking about. So we're gonna use the Everlast 255 EXT. This machine is so dope. There will be a full review coming on this machine pretty soon. So for setups, we're gonna be on AC. We're gonna be on advanced square wave on this machine. And for amperage, we're gonna be running about 200 amps. Now for the demonstration I'm gonna do in a second here, we're not gonna be using all 200 amps. That's just what I have programmed. I will dictate how much of that 200 amps I use with the foot pedal. A quick blast of pre-flow to get things going, minimal start amps, and we're gonna run 0 upslope because I am using the foot pedal. So scrolling through here for frequency, we're gonna be running 120 Hertz. For AC balance, we're gonna be running 30%, that's at 31, let's turn it back. 30% positive on the balance. We're gonna be running no downslope because we are using a foot pedal. minimal end amps. Most importantly, we're going to run about 5 seconds of post flow to make sure we have enough post flow going. And as well, for a sweet spot, I usually run somewhere between 15 to 20 CFH of argon through my regulator. That's it, let's get ready to go. Okay, as we get going here, you can see that I did get into the heat pretty quick. Even though we had the machine set for 200 amps, I'm only using somewhere between 130 to 140 amps. Now I made sure that I did my fill and chill off the start to establish a proper profile before moving. Now once everything is cool, we're going to start moving with it because we have the shape that we want. And then as we travel, all I really have to do is just make sure I maintain the proper amount of filler and really watch my lowest line, which is the line affected by gravity. And now as I approach the end, I want to make sure I finish with the same profile that I started with and established. All right, now we're going to do our next part, which is really important. We want to focus on a proper start to this one. We want to fully blend into the pocket from the previous pass. Make sure that we cover that last puddle before we start moving out and around the corner. That was just a little pass, but look, it set me up perfectly to tie in at the beginning of this one, which I make sure I take my time to fully blend into. Once it's fully blended and everything looks good, I'm going to focus on my lowest line, again, which is the line that's affected by gravity. And then once it's all good, all I have to do is just focus on maintaining the same profile, filler amount, and as long as those things are all good, then we can just cruise along. Everything's going pretty good here as I approach the end. There we go, all done. As you can see, I was doing an overhand grip. It's actually a lot easier to film this way. Okay, so you can see for our little scrap joint that we mocked up here, everything turned out pretty good, but here's what we want to have a look at. First off, the most important thing that I talked about is establishing a proper profile off the start. As you watch it again here, look at how much patience I had beginning the pass out. Once it got fully established, look at how consistent my lower line was. So this was the side that was affected by gravity. Everything looked like it stayed pretty straight. When I finished at the end of the first pass, everything stayed pretty consistent as far as width went. And then when I started out my next pass, as far as the wrap went, I made sure I had a proper blend into this puddle from the previous pass before moving out and around the corner. When I got out and around the corner, you can see I terminated with this puddle here, and the start of the next pass, which was the final run, was this puddle here. This puddle here made a full blend again before moving out, and then when I moved out, I made sure I had the proper profile of the previous pass, which again, all came from the established width and profile of this first pass. So when I moved out, you can see I finished with the same consistency that I started with on the first pass. But most importantly, look at how I wrapped this corner. We had a connection as far as a start stop here, and then another one over here. Now obviously, as this is not a painted part, you can see where my start stops were. However, if we were to paint this, you probably wouldn't even be able to tell where my start stops were. The idea is to create a profile of something that looks like it is all one pass, and that's how we properly wrap around a corner. This is a small detail that once you begin to look for it, you will see it everywhere. Once you get an idea of how to do it properly, it will bother you to see how many people miss this small and important detail. It's something that's super common, but it's frustrating because it's such an easy thing to take care of with proper planning and just a little bit of awareness to watch out for this. Again, your goal is to do a couple of great looking passes. It would drive me crazy if I had 2 passes that look great and I had a flaw in the middle to ruin the entire thing for me. It still happens to me sometimes too. If I'm not fully paying attention at connecting the two, or sometimes I can't see things properly where I'm pulling around from the backside of a corner. It's all about being aware and making sure that we cover this detail. And then just continue on properly. So check out that episode below in the description. I think it will help you out a lot with connecting your passes, especially, like I said, when coming out from behind a corner. Go out today and do a random act of kindness for a stranger. The only thing I ask in return for what you have learned here today. Check that next episode below. Check out the links to the machines I use for Pacific Arc TIG welding. My name is Dusty. Fill and chill. Have a good one. Peace.